Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, we are mainly going to talk about pleura, and the topics covered in this video have been given. We will mainly deal with what is the definition of pleura, what are the divisions of pleura, and under this division we will also deal with a further division of parietal pleura. Then we will discuss what is pleural cavity, what is pleural recess, the blood supply and nerve supply. Finally, in the end, we will deal with some clinical scenarios. So without further ado, let us start. Now, let us see that what do we mean by pleura. So we see that most of the organs in our body, it is covered by a layer of connective tissue cells in order for its protection and its fixation in its own place. For example, we can exemplify peritoneum, that is covering the peritoneal, the intraperitoneal organs of abdomen. Similarly, the ligaments that are surrounding the ovaries. In this case, the connective tissue that is mainly surrounding our lungs, it is called pleura. So, according to the definition, it says that each pleural cavity is lined by a single layer of flat cells, which is called mesothelium, and an associated layer of supporting connective tissue, and they together form pleura. So what we mean by pleura, that it consists of connective tissue and the associated mesothelium. Yes, okay. So now see what are the divisions of pleura. So pleura, according to its location, it has been divided into parietal pleura and visceral pleura. Now, as the name suggests, the parietal means it is situated on the periphery, and visceral means it is adherent to the viscera, and here it is lungs. So, the parietal pleura, it is present on the outer part, or you can say that it forms the outer wall of the pleural cavity, or you can say that it lines the inner part of the thoracic wall. So here in this diagram you see that the outer layer that I am demarcating, it is the parietal pleura. Okay, and the layer that is actually adherent to the lungs, its surfaces, its features, it is known as visceral pleura. So in our next slide we will extensively cover all the different divisions of parietal pleura, but you should know one thing, and I am going to tell you in this slide only, that the visceral pleura is continuous all along the surfaces and margins of the lung, except at the hilum of the lung and the pulmonary ligament. And what is the reason? What will be the most possible reason? Yes, you see that at the hilum, this parietal pleura is reflected and it is continuous with the visceral pleura. So you can clearly demarcate this continuation. Okay. Now, more specifically, you can say that it is the mediastinal pleura of the parietal pleura which is continuous with the visceral pleura. Yes. So, what is pleural cavity? Pleural cavity, it is the potential space. Pleural cavity, it is the potential space that is present between parietal pleura and the visceral pleura. So I am using the term potential because it is actually very thin. You can see that space is actually not so prominent, but during pleural effusion, or you can say that during pleurisy, this pleural cavity is filled with fluid. and this will lead to the inflammation. Okay, here in this video, in this diagram also, you can clearly see the pleural cavity. Okay. Okay, let us see what are the divisions of parietal pleura. So the divisions of parietal pleura are basically depending on the location. Okay, so parietal pleura is divided into mainly costal pleura, diaphragmatic pleura, mediastinal pleura, and cervical pleura. So the costal pleura, as the name suggests, it surrounds the costal surface of the lungs. Okay, now the diaphragmatic pleura, it actually surrounds the diaphragmatic surface of the lung. The mediastinal pleura, it is surrounding the mediastinal part of the lung, and it is continuous with visceral pleura at the hilum of the lung. And finally we will have cervical pleura. So this cervical pleura, it is surrounding the apex of the lung. So it is an important thing to know that this cervical pleura, it extends 5 centimeter above the first costal cartilage and 2.5 centimeter above the medial 1/3 of the clavicle. Now it is covered by the suprapleural membrane, and this suprapleural membrane, it is actually made up of two components, one connective tissue component which is known as endothoracic fascia, and the muscular component which is known as scalenus minimus. So let us see the suprapleural membrane. Here you can see this is the suprapleural membrane. The suprapleural membrane has connective tissue component and the muscular component. Already said that connective tissue component is contributed by endothoracic fascia, while the muscular component by scalenus minimus. Now let us see what do we mean by pleural recess. So pleural recesses are nothing but they are the enlarged pleural cavities, or you can say they are the potential spaces where the lungs have not generally extended or expanded during normal respiration. So these pleural recesses, they are filled by lungs only during forced inspiration. Yes, so these pleural recesses, again depending on their location, have been mainly divided into two parts. Let us have a look on this diagram. It is clear now. You see here that these pleural recesses have been divided into costodiaphragmatic recess and costomediastinal recess. Now let us look at the name. Yes, so costodiaphragmatic recess, it is actually present between the costal surface, between the costal part of the parietal pleura and the diaphragmatic part of the parietal pleura. Okay, and similarly costomediastinal recess, it is actually present between the costal part and the mediastinal part of parietal pleura. So what is the significance of these pleural recesses? Quickly, expansion of lungs into these spaces occurs in forced inspiration, already said, and these recesses act as potential spaces where fluid can be accumulated and aspirated. Here you see that two terms are given. First, accumulation, and second one is aspiration. Now have a look at this diagram. First, it is the paracentesis thoracis. Remember that during pleural effusion, we are going to discuss it in next slides, that during pleural effusion, fluid is accumulated in the potential spaces of the pleural cavity, including mainly this recesses. Here we see that in costodiaphragmatic recess, fluid is accumulated, and the aspiration of the fluid, which is known as paracentesis thoracis, is mainly occurring from this recess. So this is one clinical significance. The second clinical significance, we see that the expansion of lungs into these spaces only force inspiration. Let us move to the next slide. What is the blood and nerve supply of pleura? So, blood supply, the visceral pleura is supplied by bronchial vessels. On the other hand, parietal pleura by intercostal and the pericardiophonic vessels. Similarly, nerve supply, we have to remember, we have to always keep it in mind that the parietal pleura, it is supplied by thoracic nerves and the phrenic nerves. You see that parietal pleura has been actually supplied by two nerves, the thoracic and the phrenic nerves. Now, which parts? First thing you remember that the costal part and the surrounding, the outer part of the diaphragmatic part has been supplied by thoracic nerves, and the mediastinal part, okay, the mediastinal part and central part of the diaphragmatic pleura, it is supplied by phrenic nerves, and it is associated with the pain of the pleura. For example, if you irritate the central part of diaphragmatic pleura and mainly the mediastinal pleura, then with what happens, the pain, it will be radiating to the shoulder. Why? Already said, because it is supplied by phrenic nerves. Similarly, if you irritate the parietal pleura, the costal part of the parietal pleura and the outer diaphragmatic pleura, then the pain radiates to the abdomen and the thoracic wall because it is supplied by thoracic nerves. I think it has been cleared. Similarly, you can say that the pain, the irritation of the visceral pleura is not sensitized as pain because we know that it is supplied by autonomic nerves, not somatic nerves. Clear? Okay. Finally, have a look at some clinical terms. In this slide, we will mainly focus on pleural effusion, and again up to some amount we will discuss hemothorax, pneumothorax and pleurisy. So just we will go through it once. First, what is pleurisy? Pleurisy means the inflammation of pleura. What is pleural effusion? It is the accumulation of fluid in pleural cavity, and mainly the potential spaces the fluid seems to get accumulated, and we know their recesses. What is hemothorax? Accumulation of blood in pleural cavity. What is pneumothorax? Accumulation of air in pleural cavity. Now we will mainly focus upon pleural effusion. So what do we mean by pleural effusion? Again, accumulation of fluid in pleural cavities, and you see here that fluid between the pleural space. Yes, between the parietal and visceral pleura, mainly we can demarcate this area as, yes, costodiaphragmatic recess. The pleural effusion is observed. Now, let us have a look at the radiographs. Here on the left side, you can see a normal radiograph of our pleural, normal radiograph. On the other hand, on the right side, you will see a pleural effusion radiography. So here we see that this pleural effusion, the accumulation of fluid in the pleural space, give rise to radio opacity in the pleural cavity. Okay, so in this way we come to an end of our discussion. what we have discussed mainly the pleura definition. What are the divisions of pleura? What are the divisions of parietal pleura? What is pleural cavity? What is pleural recess? Blood supply, nerve supply, and some clinical terms. If you guys like my work, then please do like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. Please